a one-owner car since new. Yes, that is a staggering 70 years as of 2025. This Porsche carries with it not just the story of a vehicle, but the narrative of an entire era frozen in time. It is a rolling capsule of history, embodying both the brilliance of early Porsche engineering and the remarkable fragility of time. For over 6 decades, it remained hidden away, untouched, waiting in silence as the automotive world outside evolved beyond recognition. When it was finally brought back into the light, the discovery sent shockwaves through the collector car community. To stumble across a Porsche 356 that had been parked in 1962 with only 60,000 miles on the odometer is nothing short of miraculous. This wasn't merely an old car found in a shed. It was the kind of barn find that collectors fantasize about but rarely ever encounter. The story begins with the car's first and only owner, who purchased it new in the 1950s. While the details of his daily life are now blurred by the passage of time, what remains clear is that he cared deeply for this automobile during the years it was driven. By the early 1960s, when the Porsche was still relatively young, it had accumulated close to 60,000 miles, a respectable distance for a high-performance sports car of the era. And then, for reasons that will probably never be fully understood, perhaps changing family circumstances, perhaps financial shifts, perhaps simply the practicality of moving on to another vehicle, it was parked. In 1962, the car was rolled into storage, its modest mileage frozen like the hands of a clock that had suddenly stopped ticking. Decades slipped by. The world outside saw the fall of empires, the rise of new technology, the birth of countless generations of automobiles that came and went. Yet in the quiet dark where the Porsche rested, very little changed. Dust accumulated, air grew stale, rubber dried and cracked, paint faded and dulled. But beneath the patina, something remarkable endured. The bones of the car remained intact, waiting for the right moment to return. That moment came when European Collectibles, a California-based Porsche specialist, received word of the car's existence. The company, renowned for their dedication to the Porsche mark, had handled countless restorations, sales, and discoveries over the years. But this was something extraordinary. A Porsche 356, preserved by time rather than by human intervention, represented the kind of authenticity that cannot be manufactured. Following a tip-off, the team arranged to recover the car, hauling it back to their headquarters for closer inspection. When the barn doors opened and the faint light fell across the dusty shape of the Porsche, it must have felt like a scene straight from an automotive dream. Back at European Collectibles, the decision was made not to embark on a full restoration but rather to follow a preservation-first approach. This philosophy is increasingly valued in the classic car world, especially for rare vehicles that tell their story not only through gleaming paint and polished chrome, but through the scars and marks of time. In this case, preservation meant disassembling the car, inspecting every component, and then making only the repairs necessary to ensure it could function while maintaining as much originality as possible. It's a delicate balance, too little intervention and the car risks being unsafe or unpresentable. Too much intervention and the history, the soul of the vehicle gets lost under layers of modern craftsmanship. The Porsche 356 Porsche was, after all, one of the most important models in the company's history. Built before the introduction of the 356A in 1955, the Porsche cars are prized for their purity, their simplicity, and the closeness they share to the original vision of Ferdinand Porsche and his team. They feature the distinctive split or bent windshield, depending on the year, minimalist trim, and an unmistakably early interpretation of the sports car ethos. These were machines that defined Porsche's DNA. Lightweight, agile, reliable enough to use daily, yet capable of competing in motorsport. For enthusiasts and historians, a surviving Porsche is a treasure in any condition, but one that remains largely untouched and authentic is nearly priceless. When European collectibles examined the body, they were astonished to find that all the factory panels were still present. Original stamp markings verified their authenticity, a kind of fingerprint proving that these were the same pieces of metal that had left the factory in Zuffenhausen 7 decades earlier. The exterior bore the layered patina of history, remnants of original paint, partially covered by a dealership refinish that had been applied before the car entered storage. The blend of finishes created a surface unlike anything achievable today, a visual texture that told the story of a working car that had been put away before the modern obsession with flawless finishes took over. Inside, however, time had not been as kind. The interior had suffered heavily during the long storage period, and elements like carpets and seat covers had degraded beyond saving. Still, European collectibles approached this challenge with restraint. New materials were introduced only where necessary, and even then, they were chosen to blend seamlessly with the aged character of the cabin. The seats were rewrapped in aged leather, chosen specifically so that they wouldn't look glaringly out of place. The effect is that of continuity, as though the car had aged gracefully rather than been abruptly interrupted by modern upholstery. Importantly, the dashboard, steering wheel, and gauges, all tactile points of driver engagement, remained original, offering a direct connection to the experience of driving the car in its heyday. The mechanicals told an even more compelling story. The engine was disassembled and examined closely, and against all odds, it was revealed to be a numbers-matching unit. In the world of collector cars, few things are more treasured than originality in the powertrain. That the engine survived intact after so long was remarkable. Even more astonishing was the condition it was found in. Beyond requiring new piston rings and the refurbishment of auxiliary components, the engine was fundamentally sound. This speaks not only to the robustness of Porsche engineering in the early 1950s, but also to the fact that the car had been retired in good condition, rather than run into the ground. The gearbox, too, was rebuilt, as was the fuel system. Most miraculously, the original fuel tank was saved. In most cases, a tank left with even trace amounts of fuel for 6 decades would be irreparably corroded, but here it endured, a survivor against all odds. When the preservation work was complete, what emerged was not a showroom-fresh restoration, but something far rarer, a time capsule. This 356 Prie was not pretending to be new. It wore its 70 years with pride. Every mark on its body, every gentle fade in its paint, every softened edge of its chrome trim spoke of authenticity. This was not a car that had been erased and rewritten. This was a car that carried its story visibly, and in doing so, it told the story of Porsche itself. Collectors took notice immediately. In the modern classic car market, there is an increasing recognition of the value of originality. Restored cars, however beautiful, are ultimately reinterpretations. Preserved cars, by contrast, are unique records of history. They cannot be replicated. Once their originality is lost, it is lost forever. For this reason, this 356 Prie quickly became one of the most celebrated barn finds of the 21st century. It received invitations to prestigious preservation class concours events, where cars are judged not for their perfection but for their authenticity. These gatherings celebrate the beauty of survival, the rarity of a vehicle that has endured decades without losing its essence. The financial value reflected this recognition. When the Porsche was offered to the market, it fetched over $500,000, a figure that might surprise casual observers but makes perfect sense in the world of serious collectors. To them, this was not simply a car. It was a piece of Porsche history, a living artifact from the earliest days of the brand's rise to greatness. In a market where fully restored examples might command strong sums, An untouched survivor of this caliber was even more desirable, because there is only one like it. What makes this story so compelling is that it is about more than money or rarity. It's about the connection between people and machines across time. The first owner, whoever he was, could not have imagined that his decision to park the car in 1962 would echo decades later, creating excitement and fascination among a new generation. The technicians at European Collectibles, in choosing preservation over restoration, acted as stewards of that legacy, ensuring that the story of the car was not erased in pursuit of cosmetic perfection. And the collectors who admire it today do so not only because it is rare, but because it is real. In the end, the discovery and preservation of this Porsche 356 Prie speaks to the enduring power of authenticity in the automotive world. Cars are machines, yes, but they are also cultural artifacts, physical expressions of the time and place in which they were created. When we preserve them honestly, without sanding away the evidence of their journeys, we preserve not only the cars themselves but the stories they tell. This Porsche is a survivor, a teacher, and an inspiration. A reminder that sometimes the greatest treasures are not the ones polished to perfection, but the ones that carry the marks of their passage through time. It is fitting, then, that this car now finds itself in the rarefied company of preservation-class Concours vehicles, celebrated not for being flawless, but for being true. Its cracked paint and aged leather are badges of honor, proof of a life lived and a story told. As barn finds go, few can match its significance, and few will likely emerge in the future with such a remarkable balance of originality and survival. In an era where so much is restored, replicated, and reproduced, this Porsche reminds us of the irreplaceable value of the genuine article. In this sense, it is not only one of the greatest barn finds of the century, it is one of the purest expressions of what makes car collecting so compelling. For here, in a single Prie 356, we see the intersection of history, engineering, culture, and passion. And as it continues its journey, now cherished by a new generation, it carries with it the unmistakable aura of authenticity that no restoration could ever replicate.